Hello and welcome to my presentation. My name is Austin Hicks. My group members are Hernika Hypolite and Clevon Jeannot Baptiste. Today I will be telling you a little bit about how to conduct yourself in a meeting format. I will be discussing the social norms as well as some superstitions and some gift-giving practices in the Danish culture. Some basics. The Danes are considered a very low-key type of people in the sense that they're very modest about their presence in public. They do, however, have a very strong sense of humor. It is considered very ironic, which may be tough for some more literal cultures to grasp. There's also a uniformity of responsibility that's placed on the adults. It's a type of unwritten law in the Danish culture. One of the examples they mentioned is that some parents will go as far as to discipline another person's child, even though they have no relation to these people at all. There was one story of a woman actually punishing a child of the royal family, and she actually received some type of reward for doing so well, for providing her service to her country. This is something that is held to that standard at all levels. They will not hesitate to correct someone when they draw too much attention to themselves. And the underlying theme is, if you're going to be successful in Denmark in the business aspect, the key is to blend in, not necessarily stand out. We as Americans are always taught to look for something that makes us different or sets us apart, and this is very counterintuitive in this culture. In a meeting, when setting up a meeting with a Danish business person, it's very similar to setting up a meeting with a very powerful executive in the United States. They are someone that you have to give plenty of notice, as well as a very detailed agenda as to the topics that you're going to be discussing. Punctuality is also entirely important, not just when you set up the meeting, but when you will be ending the meeting. It is considered very rude to go over these times because the Danish culture is very family oriented. They would rather be spending the majority of their time with their family or their friends. When being introduced, it's considered polite to always shake the hands of the women first and maintain strong eye contact. It's also considered polite to maintain a strong personal bubble. They have a very similar proximity preference to Americans. Once the meeting is started, there is typically some type of small talk to begin, but they prefer to get down to business fairly quickly. The dialogue is considered very informal, however, it does maintain a very structured style, in the sense that it's very respectful. People are typically allowed to speak for the entire duration they prefer, and are usually not interrupted. When I say that the dialogue is informal, I mean that it's very direct, and it's very critical. In the Danish culture, it's considered the most sincere and honest form of communication when you are very blunt and to the point. Another aspect of these meetings is that they prefer to keep the paperwork at a minimum. What they require is that the paperwork they do receive contains all the pertinent and relevant information and is entirely factual. This allows for maximum discussion time. They prefer to leave the majority of the meeting time for discussing the most pertinent issues. In the Danish culture, they prefer to allow time for democracy to set in and a consensus to be reached, not necessarily voting it in. They would much rather set up a second meeting to further discuss these topics rather than have a split vote. Another aspect of these meetings is negotiating, and everything I've read so far is that the Danish people are probably better than you at it. They're considered highly educated people. They practice continued education throughout their lives, and they have a very strong grasp of interpreting information, not only from the information that you give them, but the information that you tell them, be it body language or actual things you are saying. They are typically very conservative in their offers and or counteroffers, and if you are not properly prepared, you will be left with the worst end of the deal. When closing a deal, in the Danish culture, it's very customary to build a relationship with people, especially a business relationship, on the basis of arguing. They will typically take a stance on some controversial issue and will see if how well you conduct yourself. They're not necessarily looking for your political beliefs or religious standpoints, but they want to know how you conduct yourself and how well you defend your point of view. Also, it is not very common to give gifts when a deal is reached, but it is not necessarily unwelcome. If you find yourself in the position to receive a gift, it is very polite to open that gift in front of them. Typically, these gifts include some form of Danish brewed mead, something that's very aged, something of high quality. One of the most important aspects of closing a deal is that you are very prompt in your action to follow through with whatever has been promised in that meeting. It is considered very inefficient and disrespectful to do otherwise. Also, typically, you would be invited to go out to the local pub or the famous or the favorite hangout spot of the group that you're meeting with. And typically, drunkenness is considered the polite way to end the night. Superstitions. The Danish culture tends to share very similar superstitions to the U.S., walking under ladders, broken mirrors, black cats, spilled salt. There is one that's unique to them. The government actually spent $2.5 million on a research expedition to one of the islands in the Danish region, where they would be investigating the lives of the so-called under-earthlings and the type of Homo sapien people that live underground. In business, however, there is not necessarily a sense of superstitious beliefs, but it is considered highly rude to not hold up your end of the bargain or adhere to the very strict formalities of meeting formats. And with that, I conclude my presentation. I hope that this gave you some valuable insight, especially those of you looking to do business in the Nordic portion of Europe. Feel free to ask any questions, and I will try to answer them as quickly as I can. Thanks.